So with that as an introduction, we're going to go ahead and start with a summary of the 10 steps for reducing communication costs through consumption management. Now, this is a quick overview, and I won't read through all of these because we'll be talking about these one by one, but the goal here is to walk through and give you some examples of a variety of steps that one would take, starting in the beginning with defining your policies, and then moving through to some of the benchmarking capabilities, and then obviously the final parts of educating your employees and staff, and then maintaining an ongoing review of this type of effort. So the first step is around corporate policies, and we have seen some of the very early stage benefits that organizations can apply are around both setting a wireless device policy and then executing on that policy. You know, how many devices will individual users be permitted, what types of devices? Based upon the level and the role, is the device going to be different for individual users? How are those devices going to be procured? Are individuals procuring themselves, or is it a centralized approach for procurement? And then finally, how are the invoices going to be paid? All important components that you need to address in your wireless device policy. In addition, other policies are going to be required for how are you going to manage remote employees or remote offices. You really want to make sure you're maintaining an accurate inventory of these off-site offices, and from including broadband connections, phones, wireless cards, etc. The goal here again is to make sure that you've established policies, and then the next step is going to be enhanced visibility as to how services are consumed and compare them to those policies. So in the wireless management world, there was some research that was conducted by AO and TMP earlier this year, which talked about, you know, what are some of the priority ratings for primary objectives of a wireless mobility management program. And here on the left-hand side, you'll see companies that have a formal wireless mobility management program in place. They are definitely focused on improving service to cost performance. But you'll see the second point, very much a strategic statement that they're trying to gain visibility into usage patterns, trying to understand what's going on in the consumption area that helps them drive their costs down. And then finally, improve internal customer support. On the right-hand side, you'll see much more tactical activities where, yes, they're improving service to cost performance, but it's all about improving internal customer support and standardizing enterprise applications, which are more traditional tactical activities. Nothing about visibility, nothing about gaining information that could be helpful for them to do a better job in reducing costs. So moving on to step 2 is, after having the wireless policies in place, is establishing a definition for chargeback for your organization, and then also communicating the strategy to department managers, because this really sets the stage for benchmarking costs. It lets a business manager understand what charges are being billed to his department and have visibility into that usage, which without having to rely on other reports and other help desks to call. Really providing visibility into these costs is really the core capability you need to provide these department managers to help identify either abuses against the policies or other rogue usage that might be of interest. Drill down is really key, so it's not just a static report. Having something that lets you drill into more detail, to the lowest level of detail, frankly, that will help you understand how costs are broken down and what makes up charges that are being billed to a department. A third stage is around order management, and what this requires is really a centralized perspective that allows you to kind of, in a workflow that aligns with your business requirements, make sure that you're leveraging your existing internal systems, making sure that it goes directly, the procurement process goes directly through to a company-wide accurate inventory, and that there's an alignment of this with your chargeback approach that we discussed in step 2. One example is talking about wireless devices that are ordered through the a single website that communicates the devices and the plans that can be used by employees. It eliminates the possibility of different vendors and employees being on different plans, and really allows an organization to leverage its size when discussing rates and plans with carriers. In addition, by having this centralized order management system, really allowing remote employees a consistent way to procure broadband and phone services that aligns with the policies that are in place by the organization. Step 4 starts getting into the area of benchmarking, and really the goal here is for allowing department managers to understand how their costs compare to other departments around the enterprise. And here is a sample report generated from the MBG system, which is an executive style dashboard which shows the overall telecom office usage in the upper left hand corner, gives a comparison of the top 10 departments in the upper right hand corner, but then in the second level you'll see a drill down to top 10 users, top 10 international users, top 10 late night users, and top 10 weekend users. Some of these users may be part of their role is to be conducting business during these off-peak areas or conducting business internationally, but others may be examples of abusive behavior that just is not under watch. And providing department managers with the ability to view this type of information makes them much more effective in being able to address the root cause and fix that issue. Now, step 5 talks about the optimal technology choices that you're making. So this starts getting to the place where you are looking at both the relationships you have with your service providers, you understand the details of your corporate network, or you're working with a team who does understand those details, and you're trying to make assessments as to whether or not it makes sense to move or invest further in new technologies that make you either more productive or having greater bandwidth. So you really need to make that decision. Is it appropriate to kind of move to a 3G network for wireless? Does it make sense to convert to MPLS or look at voice over IP capabilities? It's really more about looking at what's the cost benefit versus productivity benefit. Sometimes it's safe to stay on the earlier stage, not cutting edge network technology, because it is more cost effective. And once you establish what works best from a technology perspective, then making sure you're establishing those and aligning with the corporate-wide policies that you have set in place. A next step is around renegotiating contracts, where you are having the opportunity, by having the information in a centralized repository, you're able to really understand what leverage you can apply to your vendors. It requires you to really understand and know your network, have an idea what volumes are being used to call international countries as an example, and it gives you a perspective of total usage. This is really helpful as you get into negotiations with local service providers to determine whether cross-regional vendors are appropriate, or if it makes more sense to maintain local vendors that you may have in place today. Step 7 is to try to identify areas where there may be idle services, areas where services are not being used. So as examples, it might be cell phones that you're paying for a monthly fee for employees that have already left the company. Or there may be point-to-point connections that connect closed branch offices to headquarters. And many companies, we find in our earlier stages of a deployment, have many of those point-to-point connections still open that they're paying for. In addition, things like conference services or underutilized connections are areas of concern. So identifying those where you're really not leveraging the assets that you have in place. And the idea for this is that by having an accurate inventory of what you are paying for and using that accurate inventory as a catalyst for identifying savings by digging into these in greater detail. Step 8 gets into the process of recognizing that many telecom expense management activities start either in the telecom or IT area, but there's a heavy influence and alignment with the finance department. And the idea is that within finance departments, they have a different level of information they need to facilitate decisions that they make. So they look at things like we talked about with that scorecard before of top departments or top regions or top overall users. And they're really interested in understanding a certain perspective which is less technical, more finance oriented. So being able to support the finance department with reports that make sense, that identify